Welcome to the Software Lifecycle Stories podcast. We bring you stories of what worked and sometimes what did not in the course of discovering, designing, developing, delivering, and using software-based solutions, as shared by practitioners who went through these situations.
In this episode of the Software Lifecycle Stories, my colleague Milind and I, Chitra from PM Park Consulting, explore Milind's career experiences through 35 plus years in the software industry as he built Pascal compilers and assemblers, faced complex situations with interoperability and proprietary protocols in the early days of computing, being stumped by localization requirements, and his love for learning the intricacies of software and algorithms. Milind also shares his travels along the road to becoming a coach and a deep passion for Sanskrit. Listen on. We apologize for some extraneous sounds in the initial few minutes of the episode. The later part is much better, but I feel that this conversation is still worth listening to for Milind's insights and stories. Good morning, Milind. Thank you so much for being a podcast guest on the Software Lifecycle Stories. It's great to have you here as a colleague on the show. So we usually start by asking our guests to introduce themselves. Would request you and invite you to please introduce yourself for our listeners.
Let me start with from where I got into this computers. I did my Bachelor of Engineering from VJTI in Mumbai. This is one of the prestigious institutes, and in those days, computers were pretty uncommon. They're not really heard of too much. Although, as engineering students, one would hear about it. And I was actually somehow fascinated by the word computer. But there was no course offered in computer engineering or computer science at bachelor level. So I selected the next best option, which was electrical engineering. And but somewhere in my mind, I wanted to learn about computers. In third year of engineering, I got to learn about the Fortran language, and we had one small mini computer in VJTI. And I used to visit the computer center, look at the mini computer, which used to occupy a hall there. And we started learning computer programming using the punch cards. And it looked very interesting, working with algorithms and teaching the computer how to perform the operations that you wanted it to perform. And subsequently, that was a good experience, and it was like the first touch with computer in my life, and I liked it. In the last year of engineering, I got introduced to digital electronics, and we got into integrated circuits and designing flip flops, which are the basic parts of the computer circuitry. Subsequently, we learned about basics of computers, and that was the year also. The Intel was coming up with microprocessors, and we got introduced to using microprocessors, doing some assembly programming, and that world really kind of was fascinating to me. And I said that, look, this is what I want to learn. I was an electrical engineer, and I had learned things like electrical circuits and generators, transformers, motors, electrical distribution systems, and relays and whatnot. But that world didn't appeal to me. I said, no, I don't belong to this. I really want to get into this world of digital electronics and computers and stuff like that. And when I got completed my BA degree, I was not really happy with my degree. I said, I'm not where I should be. And that time, computer science was offered as a MTech level course or master's level degree level course in IIT. And I said, yes, this is something I want to do. This is what I want to learn. And then it was a bit competitive to get into MTech computer science because it was an interdisciplinary course. Anybody with any background of engineering could apply for that course. So there was a tough aptitude test which had to be cleared. So when this was the year 1981, and about 800 or so people appeared for the entrance test, and out of it 25 got selected. And I was fortunate to be selected at that time, and I got into. And then that's where I really, when I got into IIT, I really felt that that's something where I belonged, and that's the subject that I really wanted to learn. I wholeheartedly threw myself into the studies. 2 years I enjoyed learning computers, the hardware, the software, and in course of the learning, I realized that I had aptitude for software, which is much better than hardware. And working with algorithms came naturally to me, and I learned around that time the movement for structured programming was gaining momentum, and I learned from the pioneers of structured programming and the great computer scientists like Edgar Dijkstra and on. And that was very impressive. The theory of programming languages was pretty good subject for me to get into. Things like algorithm, data structures really appealed to my intellect, and really got into it. I was happy to really do those 2 years of MTech course. And then I got into TCS. It was an upcoming company at the time. Today TCS is around 4 lakh people. But way back in 1983, it was 700 people company when I joined it. And I worked with some mainframe computers. As a part of my MTech thesis, I had worked on creation of Pascal compiler for a upcoming machine which was being designed by one of the Indian companies, and that was a special project IIT was handling, and I was part of creating system software for that machine. And as a part of that, I created a Pascal compiler. That was a pretty ambitious project, and gave me deep insights into system software and compilers in particular. Compiler is a pretty complex software to really bring about. It's very ambitious task. Now, this is the way of writing compilers, and we studied the theory of compilers very well. And till date, I haven't forgotten the grammar of Pascal language, and how to handle that grammar, and really process it from a machine's perspective. I wrote, my compiler was able to generate the machine code for 60,000 base processor machine, and I could read that machine code also. When I showed it to somebody saying that this is what my compiler is capable of doing, and then a series of zeros and ones it generated, I said, how would you know it is? I said, you don't have a machine ready on which you can run the program, right? So how would one know that what the series of zeros and ones that you have generated is a program that actually was translated correctly? And thinking of that challenge, I wrote a deassembler, converting machine language program into assembly language. And I could demonstrate from given a source code how that assembly code was matching with that, how it will work correctly. So that was something. Writing code was something that came very naturally, and I also realized that there's a beauty in writing a code in a particular way. The code that is easy to understand, the code that systematically follows the logic of the mind, and that is kind of a clean code. Writing a clean code which can be easily read, can be easily maintained, it can be easily explained. And that is something kind of gave the pleasure of creating a beautiful creation. And I was deeply into structured programming. And when I joined TCS, the kind of programs which I wrote, and at times they used to be shown to people as to how a good program should be. How the program that you write is a reflection of the way you think, and that's really the something that I was pretty happy with. So think correctly and then get the program to that. Getting a program to run gave me like a pleasure of doing some good creation. And that is where I started in my career. So from system software, I moved on to networking area, then there on to the enterprise applications area, and we really had a good career. I will mention my assignment with one European company actually, and I won't put a name here, but it was a European telecom company, and in that area, the networking was just coming up. The ISO had just defined the OSI model for interconnection of computers. And before OSI was defined, this company had its own proprietary model for interconnection. And in those days, different computer manufacturers had their own proprietary technology protocols. So the computers of one manufacturer would not talk to the computers of another manufacturer, right? So if the IBM computers, IBM would talk to its own computers only, but it would not talk to the computers from Burroughs or Data General or any other DEC or somebody like that. So it was difficult to have applications run on computers of multiple vendors. So in that area, this company thought of bringing interoperability through network, in the sense that the computer would be hooked on to network node. The network node will interact with the computer which is connected in its native protocol, translate into a network protocol, and put the system information out on the network. At the receiving end, other node would receive it, convert it into the local protocol of the other machine, and talk to it. So that way, the message from IBM could get connected to Burroughs and vice versa. So bringing the interoperability through networking was a brilliant idea that they were working with. And I was a part of a network node software that I was part of the operating system for the network node. And that was a great project to really work with. And we created that network operating system and brought about that product to life. Unfortunately, that product didn't do well in the marketplace. And in course of, I worked on it for more than 2 years, and after that, the company withdrew it from the market, and then it just didn't make the money for that company.
Very interesting, Milind, because networking with common protocols today is so seamless.
Yeah, this is before TCP/IP came into existence. So after that, in the standard protocols like TCP/IP came about, and interoperability was much easier. And so this, but the way we were going about in that year, today we look back at it and smile at it. That's how it was so difficult at the time.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you. So, what's been a challenging customer escalation situation in your experience? What are some of the lessons that you can share with people with respect to customer management?
I think one of the key things here is your rapport with the customer at a personal level. The representative of customers and we should know each other as real life human beings, right? And be transparent about whatever it is. One thing is that you are a supplier because you have certain strength. They have selected you because they have seen something good in you, right? So that is why you need to be clear on what they have selected you for, and then ensure that that is reinforced. One thing. Second thing is that there will be problems. In my software life that I have been through, there were problems. I mean, we were working. One of my companies had a great software for general insurance companies. It was a big enterprise scale product, and it was customized for every individual customer. And when during customization, there would, as the nature of software, there will be some problems created, and we had to take care of. And when it happens before acceptance test, it is much easier. The problems are expected, they are reported, they are duly taken care of, and that is fine. But when you put a system out in production and then you have a problem, you have a tough time. That's a nightmare. Even today, I don't want to live with that experience of having customer breathing down your neck, saying, looking at what are you doing? This is a problem. We have to fix it fast, and you are really working hard and seeing what can be done, experimenting with it, trying to find out what's the reason, and then getting into it and creating a patch which needs to go as soon as possible. So that, but then important thing is to be transparent about it, share the information as you keep people updated of what are you doing about the problem, where are you, how much time it will take, and so that they can manage their own side. So when there's a problem, everybody is in the problem. It's a customer and you both are in the problem. And important thing is to be together as a team. That's the thing that you want to promote always. If there are issues, we will handle it. We are behind. We will not go home unless it's resolved. Don't worry about it. They also have to have confidence. Okay, they are being supported by a good supplier. So that's been one of the things really. In one of my projects for the UK government, we had created a critical application system for them, and it was one of the benefit systems that had to go live on a particular day. The government had announced that day in the parliament, and we had to deliver it on that day. And the amount of whatever acceptance that you do, you still are short of facing the real life situation. And here, usually in a production system, you want to release a production to users in a controlled manner. In the sense that you want to see some users, pilot users succeeding with it, and then you expand it, and then you expand it. But here we didn't have that option. It was like on that day you have to open the floodgates, the entire population will see it, and your system should work.
My goodness, that must have been some challenge for you, Milind.
Absolutely, that was one of the biggest challenges. It is such a pressure that you are under when you are releasing a system on that particular hour at that particular day, and there'll be issues. There were very issues, but we were fully prepared to handle them. In a couple of days, we really stabilized the system well, and after 2 days, it was running so smoothly that customer was happy. We were ecstatic, and we had a good party after that.
So, in some sense, you actually did a release at scale right away.
Yes. I wouldn't advise doing it to anybody, but sometimes there are situations you can't avoid.
Yeah, no, it reminded me that a few years ago, a large e-commerce company also made a big bang sale in line with a particular festival, in the hope of targeting a large number of customers. And
Correct.
We all know what kind of problems they ran into. But this was, I suppose, took a lot of courage, guts, to put a system out there. It's not easy.
Yeah,
you have, thousands of users.
In fact, I wouldn't advise that being that courageous. I myself am not, but there was no option. There was just no option. You had to do it.
Okay, nice, very nice. So, what do you think has been the toughest situation that you've had to face in your career?
In fact, there are many, not just one. In the 35 years of software career, you will go to tough situations multiple times. I'll tell you one instance where I was working with a customer in Middle East, and I was the project leader. Somebody before me had done the broader level of requirements. I went there and refined them further, came back, developed the system. And the system was about, there was a mainframe computer, central mainframe computer, non-stop machine, on which there was a population data. And that population, so everybody's data was there on the central computer. And the system was like this, that there was, in each of the hospitals, there would be a computer by itself, which will talk to the central, when a patient comes to a hospital, it will talk to the central computer, get the data downloaded, and then his health record will be created, and whatever is required will be done, and the whatever updates are there will be updated back to the central computer. So that way, a person can go to any of the hospitals anywhere, and his data would be available on the hospital's computer at that time. So I was in charge of creating that communication system, and I worked. And there was again, it was the same heterogeneous world which I described before, and we found some protocol which was common to both the machines. We used it, and we developed software accordingly. I took the system to customer site, demonstrated it. They said, "Okay, this looks like it looks good, but we need data to be displayed in Arabic." My
okay.
goodness, that was a required result not given to anybody. I didn't know how the Arabic script looks like. Display the data in Arabic. Oh goodness! And I spent 2 days studying the Arabic script and looking at the ASCII codes which was supporting the Arabic display, and then once how to display those things on the terminal. And within 3-4 days time, we got it ready and delivered. But that was kind of, I don't know how anybody missed that specific, doing that requirement when the requirement was collected. And it was a crisis, like the system had to go live within 8-10 days time. And then you are looking at a major requirement being, not being fulfilled.
So was this in the times before localization became a standard across requirements? Because by the time,
Correct.
let's say, we stepped into the software industry, internationalization and localization were part of a checklist of any requirement that you were developing.
This was much before that, So I could narrate you another instance where, I was sent, when I was working in my initial innings with TCS, we were working on the interoperability of this computers, and the customer had bought one software for the hospital, which was called Laboratory Information Management System, LIMS. And it was somehow, they said their data was not getting transferred to the hospital's computer. And those guys were pretty confident that they had no problem on their side. They said, this is a product and this is working at any number of customers elsewhere. It is something with your setup which is causing a problem. And I was sent to look at what the problem is. This is I using my whatever rudimentary setup they had at that time, I figured out that the application system was indeed sending the data out, but it was not getting received on the other main computer of the hospital. So there's a problem with the communication. So looking at how the things is, and the data was getting sent by the application, not received by the computer. So in between, we had to see how where was getting data lost. Using certain instruments, I figured out that there is some issue with the protocol, and then started tinkering. I was sent as an expert, and one day went by, 2 days went by, and I was nowhere near the solution. People were doubting, what are you guys are doing? Are you really understand what the problem is? I said, look, I have not understood what the problem is, but there's a problem. I know which area to look into. I'll systematically look into it and find out. On the third day, I figured out that the problem was the timing of in the protocol. I tweaked it. Tweaked the problem, the timing a little, and found that data was kind of getting, it was appearing on the network and coming at receiving end. And then that I really understood what the problem was. Experimented with it, found the right value for that timing should be, and then made it on. The whole system came to life in no time and started running. Data started getting exchanged left, right, center, and I invited them to see how it was, and everybody was so ecstatic. The problem was resolved, and that was a great experience.
Yeah, I'm sure. I can only imagine what you went through in those 48 hours until you cracked this problem.
Yeah.
Very nice incident that you've shared with us. One thing that I realized in this conversation is that very often understanding what stakeholders want or customers want can be different across different cultures. Have you had any experiences, apart from the one you described? And what is it that you would like to recommend or share with our listeners in terms of how to understand people or stakeholders from different cultures? And what is it that one can do better while engaging with them?
What? Wherever you may be in the world, I think finally the people are human beings eventually. But you have to understand that certain cultures work in certain different ways. Okay, so if you are working with people in America, so they are pretty friendly. They usually wouldn't want to offend you, so they won't talk to you angrily or something. But there are ways they will they can indicate their displeasure or something, and you need to understand that how to really take those signals. You might have seen that many times if you are talking to Americans and you ask a question which they don't have answer to, usually they'll say, that's a good question. Right? so you have to understand such things and get the signals, okay, and accordingly adjust your behavior. There's no easy way of it. I think one needs to be really educated properly. Like is a standard thing like Indians say yes, or you move neck in such a head in such a manner, whether you are saying yes or no is not really understood by the people. Whereas in Western world, you move the head vertically, you mean say yes. But in our country, people may move the head horizontally and still mean yes, right? So, so these are the kind of differences that one has to be really aware of, and adjust oneself accordingly. But the most important thing is that there will be cultural differences. At times, you will be you may misunderstand people. But important thing is to really get into understanding what they really mean, understand where you made a mistake in understanding them, and adjust yourself accordingly. There will be situations which we are facing for the first time, and they can kind of lead to misunderstanding. But be open to finding those misunderstandings and adjusting yourself. That is the thing. There will be a lot of differences like that.
That was nice.
You know?
Very nicely said, Milind. Thank you. From being a systems engineer and through your career, what are some of the roles that you have, taken on, and what have been some of your experiences in those roles, and how did you make this transition to being a coach?
Chitra, we were part of the industry which grew very, very fast. You remember, you would not have seen, but it is the software industry in India was mostly, supplying the skills, and that kind of it was easy business. So and it grew very fast. Many people in the Western world realized that you can have good engineers at much lesser cost from India, and so we were kind of very well in demand in Western part of the world as well as from companies like Australia and etc. In fact, around that time, around 90s, I wanted to settle in India and wanted to have a better job in India. And anywhere I applied, they wanted to send me abroad. So that was the kind of scene. And this industry grew very, very fast at the time. And I wanted to be based in India and wanted to have a good kind of a managerial role for myself. I had grown from being a programmer to project leader to project manager. And I was looking at a little senior role than that. That was about 8 years experience in the industry. And I was not able to get a kind of job that I would like to. Everybody wanted to send me abroad as a body shopping assignment. And then one company offered me the kind of job that I was looking for as a systems consultant and working with a senior level responsibility for turnkey projects and so on, which I gladly accepted and worked with it. But I was kind of coming from engineering background, but the company did help in more into sales and marketing, and I didn't consider that as my strength. But I said, okay, that is something which is like important for business, so I have to learn this thing as well. So started getting into sales support kind of assignments, and about more than a year down in that kind of role, I was asked to take charge of the new office being opened in Europe. So I was asked to take charge of that office in Europe and do the business development there. Well, I was not really keen on doing that in a foreign country because I was just learning that in India. But then there was no other alternative. So I accepted assignment and went there in the middle of a recession. So there was not great business to be really achieved, but somehow with a good effort, we broke into getting some business and establishing office there, getting the business and running the office on its own. So that was a kind of great experience, getting. But I realized that I was better managing the back end, supporting the front end salespeople, and getting the sale executed was kind of. I thought that was my strength. And the next role that I took up was kind of a director of engineering in a California-based company. It was a product company, and the world of products really, was something which attracted me. This company had a project management software on a Unix platform, and development. They were trying to do the development in India and sell it in US for Fortune 500 customers. Their experience with getting software developed in India was not very encouraging. Somehow the distributed team concept, which was pretty new at the time. In fact, this was one of the pioneering efforts that I know of doing development in India, or partly doing a development in India and partly in the US, and then launching the product. No, and they were not really getting the right kind of things developed in India. And I was when I was told about it, I said, why is that so? Because in TCS we do it like we have customers who are located across the globe, and we go there, do the requirement analysis, come back, develop, and deliver. So why can't you guys do? He says, no, products are a different world. It's not that we need to change and stuff like that. So it's not that easy. I said, whether you easy or not, the people around that time, Motorola had developed, created a development center in India. Texas Instruments had created a development center in India. I said, look, guys from Americans are setting up development houses in India. And these founders of this company were all Indians. They knew Indians when they knew the Indian culture. I said, you guys are Indians and you have better connections with the India. So you should be able to do it very well as well. He said, Milind, do you want to come on board and take charge of this? We will welcome you. So with that challenge, I got in, and then that was and software product companies work a lot differently, and this was a kind of startup, so it really worked with a lot of energy, and meeting the demands of the startup startup organization from somewhere in India with a time zone difference of 12 hours, I realized that was actually a challenge. But then I realized that the key thing is to, go about it in a bit of agile way. And this was much before agile came into existence as agile. But certain practices were being talked about in the industry. And I realized that yes, that is something that is very important. The key thing here is the very close communication. Form an integrated company, integrated team. A part of team located in US and part of the team located in India, work in an integrated manner on a daily basis, exchange your information on daily basis, and keep in touch with each other and see to it that you're really delivering it correctly. And with the close communication between on-site part and the component and the offshore component, we finally managed to evolve a process by which deliveries which were being delivered from India were kind of acceptable to the American teams as well. Things worked, that experiment worked, so the company started offshoring more and more work here. And very soon, when I had joined that company in India, we had about 10 people, including me and my secretary. And in course of time, in 3 years' time, it was like 100 people, 50 people company working in India, and we eventually managed to transfer not just engineering stuff, but also the support stuff to India. So except for the sales and marketing, all other activities of the company got transferred offshore. That was a kind of a great achievement that for us.
So from this experience, how did you move on to becoming a coach and then get to where you are today?
Actually, this is a long journey. Yeah. This was this company I had worked with. I left them in around 1999. After that work, to what we today know as Tech Mahindra for some time, and then also I was invited to another startup, and there I worked for 4 years. Again, that startup didn't do well. Although engineering wise we are doing very well. So, but then I joined after that. Joined Accenture. I was with Accenture for 6.5 years, looking at part of the public service division. Then I came into CNC Corporation. That was a subsidiary of TCS. And TCS merged CNC in year 2015. So CNC got merged into TCS. And I came to TCS in 2015. I had some projects which I was handling in CNC. After though I was through with them, there was no work for me in TCS. The senior level positions were all filled up, and they didn't want another general manager. They didn't have place for a general manager. And for some time, I was absolutely doing nothing, and there was no formal assignment given to me, and I kind of didn't like the situation that I was in, and I decided that we had to do something about it. So I wrote to all the business unit heads that look, this is what my background is. This is where around that time, I was before getting into this, I had run in one of my companies. I had run a special initiative for project management, consultancy development. Another part of that, I had got about more than 300 people PMP certified in 1.5 years time. And I thought that that is something that TCS would value. So project management skills is something that all companies need. And I said, look, I can help you guys with project management. But around that time, like in 2015-16, TCS had kind of made a commitment that they will adopt the agile techniques more and more. So they were not really interested in looking at project management. And one of the things that I was specifically interested in, and this is something which not many people have studied, is an area called organizational project management maturity. PMI has a special standard for it, which is called OPM3. All right. So I was part of a volunteers team which contributed to the development of OPM3, and that is something I thought that TCS would like to get deeper into, but TCS was not interested in. Nobody in TCS was interested in. And in one of the business heads that I wrote to, asked me, "Can you help us with agile adoption?" Agile, I had experimented with it since the days I was with that startup company from US doing project management software. So, and even in Accenture, we had played with agile techniques. In CMC also, we were teaching agile techniques, but I had not worked as a coach. But I said, okay, I'll tell you what I know. We can discuss what your requirements are, and we can decide whether I can take it up as a coach or something. And key to problem it was described to me is that, look, we have adopted agile. Just 6 months down the road, we have made a commitment to it. We have got our prepared trained on agile. But the unit head told me that I do not see real transformation in the team. I don't think that we really understood what agile is, and all the people are going through the motions of following Scrum. I said, okay, I think I understand what you want. Let me look at the teams and see whether I can really help you or not. And then when I interacted with the teams, I realized the problem. Yes, they were following Scrum. They were doing the DSM, the daily Scrum meeting. The heart of DSM, the real thing that DSM should achieve, is not being achieved because they have not really understood what DSM is. They're going through the motion of DSM, but not really understanding that this is something what Scrum advises us with opportunity to inspect and adapt. So what is inspect, what is adoption? That is something that they had to understand. And I realized what I needed to do. And I accepted assignment and kind of become agile coach. And the key thing was to really explain to people what are the values and principles and how they come to life through various practices that we follow. So how a sprint review should be like, how a sprint retrospective should be like. So these are things that once they were understood by the people, I think the real life agility came into picture. That is, that's how I transitioned to becoming agile coach.
Thank you, Milind. Very interesting story. So one last question before we wind up this particular podcast. If it hadn't been for software, what would you have done?
I describe myself as somebody who was born in software. So there's nothing else that I would have done professionally, really. But if you ask for the interest, outside, I'm very much interested in Sanskrit as a language. And I like Sanskrit. I have studied a bit of Sanskrit. I like reading it. And that is something, that studying Sanskrit or studying literature in Sanskrit gives pleasure. And there's a treasure of available for us. I think all Indians should, learn Sanskrit. Really, it's a language which gives, joy when you actually use it. Sanskrit is described as a Devavani. And I have no doubt about it. It's like when you use Sanskrit, you are at a higher level of consciousness. It's a different experience, but it's a nice language, great language to be, and I really love it. So in fact, I would really want to advise. Today, Sanskrit is being recognized as one of the powerful languages, even with the use of computers, right? So So that's a great language to really look at, and it's something that I think is a part of our heritage, and it will be a most miserable thing if we lose that heritage. We should not.
Thank you, Milind. I think these are wonderful words to close this podcast with. I also noticed that there are several other topics that we can definitely talk about and perhaps have other episodes on. So thank you very much for your time. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I enjoyed asking you questions and listening to it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chitra. It was nice talking to you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you like the show and would like to share your experiences with the community or know someone else who might want to do that, please get in touch with us at podcast@pm-powerconsulting.com. That is podcast@pm-powerconsulting.com.
Please rate this show on Podchaser, Stitcher, iTunes, or any other podcast client that you find us on. Please also share our episodes with your friends and others in your network. If you or anyone you know would like to be featured on our show, do write to us at this email address: podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.